Hello and welcome to viewers of Good Morning DRC TV. I would like to invite you to watch a clip of an interview of the Minister of Communication and Media, also the spokesman of the DRC government, who's in Paris, and he has answered some questions, which I believe is very important for all of you out there who wants to know what's going on with the Doha meeting between the M23 and the government, and also want to understand what is included in the deal in the US. So I invite you to watch this clip of an interview which is taking place today, the 29th of April in Paris. Yes, I will come back to you later on, maybe to comment. If not, then please do give me your comments, and I'll be more than happy to basically share my thoughts as well. It's always a pleasure for me when I hear comments from all of you who are involved in this. So please do write. Do let me know what you think. This is very important in terms of what we are doing. Thank you ever so much for those who are engaging in this conversation. I really appreciate this. Here we go. Listen, peace is what we have been seeking for several years. Since the beginning of this conflict, it's been more than 2 years. And thanks in particular to the pragmatism of the new administration, we have managed, after Doha dynamic, to make significant progress today. And the clouds are clearing further to allow us to achieve peace. The peace that must be a peace that is built, a real peace, not an appearance of peace, because we have experienced reoccurring conflicts led by Rwanda since 1996. The cycles have never stopped. This time, we hope that with the United States involvement, which is building on regional efforts led by the Angolan president, we will be able to sketch out a path to a lasting peace. And when we have peace, the peace we want to be lasting, we will have laid the foundations for development, first in the DRC, then in these regions, but also in the entire sub-region, because you know the geographical position of the DRC and the influence it can have, particularly in terms of trade for all countries in the region. And that is what we are counting on. After we have achieved this peace, a peace that we have been seeking for so many years, we hope that this will be succeed. Peace is what you want, but at what price? And above all, do you trust the Rwanda? The question is not whether we trust Rwanda or not. The question is that Rwanda is a country that borders the DRC, and that will always be the case. So at one point or another, we have the opportunity in the past to live in peace. Because you know, after all, after taking office, the President of the Republic had a single goal, which was to see Africa reborn, taking off from the DRC. But this can only happen if there is economic trade between the populations. Well, that's the idea that has always guided him in our relations. Let's not forget that the DRC has 9 neighboring countries. I don't think there is any other country in Africa with so many neighbors. And the President of the Republic had visited all of them to ensure that we laid the groundwork. But unfortunately, there have been the usual factors, particularly on the Rwandan side, because they have always believed that they should continue to plunder the minerals, resources of the Democratic Republic of Congo. When you ask at what cost, listen, many Congolese have died, have been displaced, and we believe that this should not continue. In any case, as far as the Central Africa region is concerned, specifically the Great Lakes region, there have been too many deaths. When we count them, we are talking about 800,000 deaths in Rwandan genocide of 1994. But when we add the deaths of Congo, there are more than 10 million and the statistics keep rising. That is too many for this region, and that is why we want to move towards peace today. But a peace that must not be achieved at any price, precisely because if you look at the 6 principles that make up the declaration signed under the auspices of the US government, the first thing we are not compromising on is the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC. That is a point on which we will not compromise, and Rwandans know it, and everyone knows it. It is not for nothing that all the statements issued since the beginning of the conflict have reiterated the support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC. But now, subsequently, measures have been taken in particular to address security concerns. You know that we are in border areas where security concerns may be on the table when discussing economic and the return of refugees and displaced persons. All these issues have been discussed between the 3 parties and are still being discussed today. The teams are working on a draft agreement, which once signed will mark the beginning of another process that should bring about radical change from what we are seeing today. Because of this, an agreement in principle, yes, it is an agreement in principle, which obviously be developed into a comprehensive agreement that will ensure the return of peace. A peace, as I said, that will be lasting. This means that after the signing of this agreement, we will no later see Rwanda return under false pretext and try to pillage, kill, and plunder in order to keep its hold on economic resources, and as it has been doing for 30 years. This time must be the whole question of trust. Do you trust them? Well, listen, the question is not whether we trust them or not. The question is that we are in a regional dynamic that has global implications, because I should remind you, the Democratic Republic of Congo is the solution to the problem far beyond anything we are facing today. The mobile phones you use contain components that come from the DRC. It's not for nothing that we started a campaign, particularly here in France, against Apple, because we suspected that there are miners in the supply chain who were being killed and crimes were being committed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Apple has stopped sourcing from the region, which already represent a loss of income for all those who profit from the DRC's wealth through embezzlement. So here, the challenge for us is that when we have peace and stability, we can talk about economy in terms and conditions. So in this agreement, if this agreement is implemented, I believe that the economic structure of the Great Lakes region will change, and Rwanda's economic models must change, because it is out of question to continue to think that we can build ourselves up by plundering the mineral resources of our neighbor, the DRC. Very well. Your government and M23 have also published the first joint statement, which refers to a frank and constructive discussion between the 2 parties in attempt to reach a truce. What justifies this change of approach when we finally know the government's doctrine? Is the M23 still considered Rwanda's surrogate? But you know, the president said, of course. Is there still a red line today? Nothing has changed in reality, because there have been facts. For several months, we have been reading reports not only from our own services, but also from the United Nations expert and foreign intelligence services, which confirmed that the M23 was in fact a column of the Rwandan army. These are facts, but it is perhaps not time to revisit, because we are in a phase of de-escalation, a phase of landing. But I must remind you that statement you saw on the 23rd of April is only a follow-up to the one you saw on 18th of March between the Emir of Qatar, the Rwandan president, and the Congolese president. That was the trigger. You cannot interpret the statement of the 23rd without linking it to the statement of the 18th. The two go hand in hand. In any case, we around the President of the Republic and the government have a firm and radical position not to negotiate or discuss with proxy. But it turns out that the firmness of our position led to all the sanctions we have seen, because we must not forget that all Western capitals impose sanctions on Rwanda. And in all decision on sanctions, understand that even when you read the Security Council Resolution 2773, we in the DRC were recommended to engage in a dialogue or open dialogue, including the M23. And that is what we did because it is part of the general context of an evolving crisis. And so discussions are ongoing. We have arrived at the principle of a truce that will pave the way for a cessation of hostilities, from which point we can see how to work progressively to follow up on what the heads of state gathered around SADC and EAC agreed on regarding the lifting of the siege of Goma and Bukavu, the opening of the airports and the opening of access routes to allow this population to receive humanitarian aid. I'm asking this question because some will ask why this was not done earlier, why this concept of red line was announced to the M23. The context was not right. I have told you that we are in a process where conflicts evolve, and that thanks to the clarity and firmness of the DRC's position, we have seen lines shift. We cannot consider that we have nothing to do or no duties to fulfill at our level in order to achieve the objectives of peace, insofar as everyone wants it. I must remind you that on 15th of December 24, everything was ready. Everything was ready in Rwanda. The Rwandan president did not come, he did not show up, and we saw what happened next. So there were attacks in Goma and systematic attack in Bukavu. So you are sticking to your diplomatic strategy of red line with the M23. It was obviously a strategy that had been thought out and accepted, but it is a strategy that has evolved because the firmness we had shown led to sanctions, which are a means of pressure to bring about peace. And we believe that today the conditions were right for the President of the Republic to change his position to allow us to make progress on this issue. So there is no longer a question of red lines today. It depends on what you mean by red lines. If red lines was not to discuss with the M23, then today we have crossed it. But there are red lines that still exist. I must remind you that in the 6 principles that we have agreed upon, the red lines are, for example, respect for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the DRC, including our mineral resources. These are red lines that remain. These are principles that cannot be deviated from. Okay, how did you welcome the appointment of the Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé as mediator to succeed President Raul Lorenzo? Is it the right man for the job today? We welcome him. It is clear to us that we need to achieve peace, and we appreciate the tremendous work done by the Angolan president. But given his new responsibilities within the African Union, someone else needed to be found. We have a strong president who knows the region well and is committed. He will not be alone because there are 5 facilitators who are supposed to accompany him. And so with everything that is happening, the momentum in Washington and Doha, which has taken shape thanks to the regional effort led by President Lorenzo, we believe that he will complete the work that has been started so well. And speaking of the Trump administration, does it represent a true ally for you today, the Congolese people? Listen, one of the key aims of the new administration is that there is a desire to achieve peace in all the crises around the world. And I believe that this is an approach that has been a little different from other approaches, particularly in other crises where the American president had the good sense to choose Dr. Bullos as his special envoy, as his special advisor. Yes, when it is important and someone who knows Africa well has come to the region to meet the various actors in order to propose a more concrete approach that takes into account the realities of the region and the need to achieve a lasting peace, because that is the case here. It is no longer just a question of achieving a cessation of hostilities. It is about eliminating all the pretexts that have been used repeatedly for 30 years by Rwanda to attack the DRC. And that is why the discussions that are underway are very strategic, because they will determine the future of the entire region. The stakes are not in 1 or 2 years. The stakes are decades of years of deaths, that will follow for the entire economic and regional environment of this part of the country. That is why we welcome the pragmatic approach of the Trump administration. We welcome it because it has been a long time since we have seen such a high level commitment from the US government. Obviously, with the efforts of Qatar, we believe that all these efforts combined with regional effort can enable us to achieve peace. The starting point, therefore, is the signing of an agreement that will be the starting point for work that will still require a lot of time to address all the causes that have justified the wars that have devastated millions of Congolese families in recent years. And with the American too on strategic minerals, we are on the point where an agreement must be reached. Listen, strategic minerals are important, it's true, but we must first make peace because obviously strategic minerals, don't forget that the Rubio region accounts for at least 20% of global coltan production. So obviously these are strategic minerals, a strategic issue, but we cannot achieve such a goal if we do not go through the peace process. And when we talk about it with the American government, in reality, it is a package that first consolidates the strategic and economic partnership that exists between the two countries. So we, the Democratic Republic of Congo, are known as the solution country, not only because we have large reserves of strategic minerals, but also because we have, for example, a vast forest and peatland reserves for which mean that while humanity is being destroyed on a daily basis, our forest is working to repair it. And so with the Americans, we will obviously have these frameworks that will first of all provide a number of facilities. We'll identify two projects that will not only concern the eastern region of the DRC, but the entire DRC, based on well-identified sectors that are currently under discussion. From that point on, the American government will assist American companies that are interested, and we will establish a framework. That is why I'm saying that the challenge is decades of work ahead, because even when you finalize a mining deal, it takes time to get it up and running, build factories and everything else that is needed. And then there is the business environment, which is not yet conducive from what we're hearing. In any case, let us not deceive ourselves because we are always talking about business cases. We agree. We know that there are obvious certain difficulties, but I can assure you that even here in Paris, there can always be difficulties in certain respects with regards to a number of things. Let's not forget that despite the business environment we're talking about here, the country that produces most of the world's cobalt is the DRC. And we're taking the decision to suspend cobalt's export. With prices skyrocketing, this means that even if there is obviously work to be done at our level to create more conducive and favorable business conditions, this does not prevent us from playing our leading role today in everything related to the ecological transition. That is why all the American companies that are interested to look beyond what has been said about the laws come and see for themselves how we can improve so that we can move forward. And in your opinion, is France rising to the challenge? Listen, France has played its part and continues to do so. Just last week, I read about President Macron's willingness to contribute to the return of peace. And it's true in terms of perception, in our opinion, France may not have used all the levers at its disposal to put pressure on Rwanda, given the strategic importance of the DRC as the largest French-speaking country in terms of size and population, but also other aspects. However, it should be noted that France played a leading role in Resolution 2773 and the sanction imposed by the European Union. That said, there is always room for improvement because, as I said earlier, we must not forget that the progress we have made today is a result of several regional efforts, including European efforts to which France has also contributed. And so there is always a role to play once the peace agreement is in place, but there is also the follow-up, whether in terms of economy, reconstruction, or the various programs that will need to be launched for the disarmament and demobilization. France and other European countries can always play a role. And what would you say that Senko is responsible for the fruit of the mediation efforts that have led to today? Senko? Senko too? Well, listen, Senko is involved in a rather internal process, if you like. But the crisis had already been clearly identified. There were regional processes that had been put in place, and so Senko, which arrived with the Protestants with an additional initiative, believe that we can also work together to achieve peace. They have followed their own path, and we will wait because it is normally expected that at some point the president will receive them and discuss with them to see what follow up he can give to the proposal. But here we are, guided by the imperative of a return to peace that we want to be lasting. No, but you welcome the approach of the five at the government level. You welcomed it, but it is an initiative aimed at restoring peace. It's not the only one. Other religious groups have also taken similar initiative. That's not a bad thing. The President of the Republic is deeply a peaceful man, but only insofar as the proposal put forward by various parties contributes to his vision, at least for the restoration of peace and the building of a national cohesion. Why not? We must not forget that the President of the Republic himself launched consultation with special counsel. So we will see all these initiatives can be achieved when they converge. These conclusions of the consultation are not yet known. But what about the national government? The conclusion of these consultations were intended for one recipient only, the President of the Republic, and it is he who, based on the parameters on his table, will determine whether we should move forward at this time or not. And of course, he will analyze the proposal made to him and draw his own conclusion. So we can expect a reshuffle in the coming days in the government of a national unity. Listen, this is not within my remit because you must understand I myself am involved, and so this is a matter of the President of the Republic to decide at his discretion. So when the time comes, he will be able to take responsibility for consultation without the real opposition, which is also a failure. But how can you say that it is a failure? Who are the real opponents? Who are they opposing? Who are they opposing? Because here we have a problem. The problem is the presence of an enemy. The problem is Rwanda's aggression. And you cannot go beyond that because our political posturing, when the country is threatened, when the country is in danger, what is the job of the opposition? Listen to Martin Fayulu and Adolphe Mozito. They are clear in their condemnation of Rwanda. They do not have an ambiguous attitude towards evil. And so you cannot even, if you are in opposition, fail to denounce the aggression, fail to denounce Rwanda with its auxiliary and surrogates, is responsible for more than 10,000 deaths in Goma, and is now responsible for crimes against humanity, and crimes of genocide. In any case, there are seeds of change that we are working on. What are we talking about here? And can you tell us on this program that former President Joseph Kabila, who is in an ambiguous situation, is considered a rebel, has spoken out in clear support of the M23, which he fought against? Former President Joseph Kabila is in an ambiguous situation, is considered a rebel, almost a rebel leader, has spoken out in clear support of the M23 group, which he fought against. It's rather unfortunate. I don't know what advice he was given, because given his position in the past, President Kabila, he has rather this reputation that is criticized for with the M23. Yes, but be careful when you note that, because when he broke his silence, he justified the M23's fight. He justified it. He asked the South African government not to support the Congolese government. The M23 is a movement that he fought against as president, as supreme commander of the military forces under his command, who died because of the actions of those who are also behind the M23. It's a huge contradiction. We expected him to take a peaceful role, not a role that takes sides with those who have always killed, with those who have always wanted to harm the DRC. It is disappointing to see that this is the line taken by former President Joseph Kabila in his political comeback. But what will you be prepared to welcome him in Kinshasa for talks? Well, listen, he has taken certain position. I pointed out earlier that President Tshisekedi is a man of peace, deeply committed to peace, and that if Joseph Kabila wanted peace, he would have acted differently. Very well. To conclude, what about the constitutional reform project? If everything goes well, do you plan to revisit this idea put forward by the President of the Republic? Listen, the top priority here is territorial integrity and sovereignty. But no, let me finish answering your question. That's the main point, because we can't have debates on revisiting or changing the constitution when the country's integrity is under threat. Now, once we finish this war, of course, why not? Because today, the idea to succeed is having a strong and effective state. So we need to have conditions of calm that allow for these debates. And for the moment, those conditions are not yet in place. So it's not yet off the table. It will come up again if everything goes well according to plan. Listen, obviously, this must not be a taboo subject. You were saying that history proves you right. With this constitutional reform sought by the president, history proves you right, according to certain political analysis. So you're considering revisiting this issue? No, not the issue. That's why it's important not to analyze things politically. The difficulty, in my view, is that I see inconsistencies among the opponents who wants to launch a debate on federalism when they are not even in a position to denounce Rwanda's system. The same opponents that I have seen or heard denouncing this deal with the US, as it is called, proposed by the President of the Republic to the American administration, because they think it will profit President Tshisekedi. That is very poor reading of the situation. What President Tshisekedi is doing now is not doing for himself. He's doing for the posterity, the millions of young Congolese who will come and who, thanks to his pragmatic policy today, will be able to effectively benefit from the minerals deal. We know the past position of all parties. We know what relationship they had with the mines. It is no longer a question of revisiting the past, but today we want to look to the future with optimism. We believe that President of the Republic, through the initiative he has launched, notably with the US government, will enable us to envisage the future, at least for the next decade, in a more positive line for our people, who will finally be able to benefit from the dividend of a transparent mining in this condition of human rights and so on.